Hi, my name is Grace. I'm an adult services librarian at the Grandview Heights Public Library, but I'm here today to talk about some young adult titles that I've recently enjoyed. I've got 4 books for grades sort of 4 through 6, and then 4 books for older kids, grades 7 through 12 or so. And we're here every Thursday with some book recommendations for these age groups. We also offer book talks for younger kids. So check out our Youth Services Facebook page for more videos if you're looking for something for another age group. And we also have adult book talks on the Grandview Library Facebook page every Wednesday. I'm going to dive right into the grades 4 through 6 titles that I have. The first one is called The Wiz Mob and the Geraldine Kid by Colin Malloy. This was a really fun book. It takes place in the 1960s in Marseille, France. The main character, Charlie, and his dad are living there. His dad is a diplomat, and so they sort of travel all over the world, and that means that Marseille isn't very exciting for Charlie, even though it's a beautiful place, and most people would, love to travel and visit there. So he's sort of bored with his life, and he befriends some kids while he's out and about in the city, and they are a whiz mob, and that means that they are thieves. They are pickpockets. They have these sort of elaborate plans to take everything from jewelry to wallets and actual, cash from people's pockets at different events around town. And it's really exciting, and Charlie loves it. He even becomes a whiz himself. He becomes the Geraldine Kid. And then things sort of take a turn. Something that's really important and valuable is stolen from someone that is important to his father. So Charlie is sort of on a mission to get that item back. And it's not as easy as you'd think. All of his Wiz Mob friends actually attended a special school to practice their skills, and Charlie had to learn on the streets pretty quickly. So, is he going to be good enough to get it back? How is he going to try to get it back? Where is it? It was a really interesting story. I've never read anything quite like it. One thing I really enjoyed about this book is that it had illustrations sort of scattered throughout. It's definitely not a picture book or anything like that, but it was really fun to sort of stumble across these sorts of illustrations every couple of chapters, since they just sort of helped show you sort of what the environment was like, what's going on in the book, and the style is very sort of 60s mod, so it sort of gives a vibe to the book that I think fits with the story. So The Wiz Mob and the Geraldine Kid by Colin Malloy, sort of a mystery, with this fun element of these kids that are, pickpockets in Europe in the 1960s. So the next book that I have is called Ghosts by Raina Telgemeier. I love her stuff. You may have read Drama or Smile or Sisters. She's done quite a few graphic novels, and this one is just as good as those, but it's a little bit different. This one's about Kat and her sister Maya. Maya is her younger sister, and she has cystic fibrosis. So Maya is struggling with her health, and in order to hopefully make that a little bit easier, their family actually moves to a new town where the environment's a little bit better for Maya. So they've, sort of moved, and things are tough for that, but then they discover that the town has ghosts. And Kat is sort of nervous about them at first. She doesn't really want to see one. She doesn't want to encounter one. But Maya's sort of fascinated because she's sick. She's always sort of wondered what happens after you die, and is there a way to connect with your family still? And the ghosts sort of teach that lesson. They show how important it is to connect to your family and your friends even after you're gone. So it's sort of a beautiful story in that way, beautifully illustrated, just like everything that she does. I really love the characters and sort of West Coast town feeling that you get from the illustrations. So I highly recommend this one. It was a great read. Ghosts by Raina Telgemeier. The next book that I have for grades 4 through 6 is called Absolutely Truly. This is a mystery. Truly Lovejoy and her family have just moved to a town called Pumpkin Falls in New Hampshire. Her dad lost his arm in the military, and so they've sort of uprooted their lives so that he can go back to Pumpkin Falls, which is where he grew up, and he's going to run the family bookshop, take over from his parents. And he's struggling with that decision, and things are a little tough at home, and Truly's not adjusting great to moving, and then she finds some really great friends, and then there's a mystery to solve. They find this envelope with a clue, and that leads to another one, and so they sort of work together to get to know the town, to get to know each other, and to solve this mystery. The whole time they're making over the bookshop, they're trying to bring it back to life and put Pumpkin Falls on the map. So I really like the characters. Truly and her family have a really wonderful story, but then of course there's this mystery that's taking place. This is actually the first of a series by Heather Vogel Frederick, all about Truly and her family. So I'm excited to read more of these books. This is the first one, like I said, absolutely Truly, and I highly recommend this one. The last book that I have for grades 4 through 6, I loved. It's another graphic novel. It's called Go With the Flow by Lily Williams, and it was beautifully illustrated. It's all about periods. More specifically, it's about the fact that girls don't necessarily have access to the supplies that they need, especially at school. And you'll notice that all of the illustrations are done in shades of red, which I thought was just a really clever, creative way to sort of keep us reminded of what we're talking about. Everything is red throughout the entire book. So I loved the creativity of the story, the illustrations. Basically, these friends, realize that the supplies are not available to girls like they need to be, and they are on a mission to bring awareness to that issue. So they start a campaign and it sort of goes viral. So instead of just making change at their school and in their town, they start a conversation, using the internet all over the world. And they're talking about the different social issues that come about when girls don't have access to the supplies that they need, when there's stigma attached to periods. They sort of talk about how a lot of girls don't feel comfortable asking questions and don't understand what's happening to their body. They answer some questions among themselves. And this is just a wonderful book. Girls, boys, kids, adults, everybody should read this because this is something we should be talking about. And they do a really good job of making it entertaining while also talking about some really important things that are going on in the world right now. All right, so now I'm going to talk about some books for older kids, grades 7 through 12. The first book I've been really excited to talk about. It's called Concrete Rose by Angie Thomas, and this is a pretty brand new book. This is actually the story of Maverick Carter, who is the father of Star from The Hate U Give. So this is sort of a prequel. It takes place before The Hate U Give, when Maverick is still a teenager. So he's 17 and he finds out that he has a son. And he has to grow up really fast. He has to learn how to be a father, but he's also still a kid. He's navigating that. At the same time, he's in a gang. He doesn't know if he still wants to be. And then he finds out that he has a second kid on the way. And again, he's 17. I mean, he's really young to be dealing with such tough issues, but this is what's happening. So he has to figure out what he wants his life to look like. It was really fun to be introduced to some of the characters that we know from The Hate U Give, in a different point in their lives. We've gone back to the 90s when Maverick is young, Star's mom is young. You might remember King, one of the main characters in The Hate U Give. He's, a friend of Maverick's at the time. They're in high school together. So this was a really interesting book in that you're sort of jumping back in time. A prequel isn't always something that a lot of authors do really well, and this was really well done. Angie Thomas is amazing. If you read The Hate U Give, or maybe if you read On the Come Up, which is another one of her books, I think you'll really enjoy this one. Concrete Rose by Angie Thomas. The next book I have is called They Wish They Were Us by Jessica Goodman. And this is a thriller, absolutely. It's a mystery, but in that sort of thriller way. Basically, you have this group of friends at this elite prep school, and they are part of a secret club. They're called the Players, and they have sort of this network of people who have come before them and who support them by giving them answers to tests and making sure that they get into the best colleges, help write their essays. I mean, it's a club that's going to take them places. So to join, you are going through a hazing process. And one of their friends dies. So then it's sort of what happened to her, who did it? Was it one of their other friends? Was it a teacher? Was it a stranger? Is there really even a mystery to solve? And so Jill Newman, who's the main character, is sort of figuring out if she wants to be part of this elite club. Is it worth it? And what happened to her friend Shayla? How did she really die? And is the right person being held accountable? I don't want to give anything away. I will just say that up until the very end, I thought I knew what was happening and I didn't. The twist was fantastic. It was perfect for the story, and it was really well done, so that, up until the very last couple pages, you just weren't even sure if the story was going to come together, and it came together beautifully. So They Wish They Were Us by Jessica Goodman. Really, really good thriller. The next book I have is called Alasoa, And this was really different. It was not what I was expecting. I didn't realize it was going to be a fantasy book, but it definitely was. Alasoa is the name of the main character, but she goes by Ellie, and she is a Lipan Apache. And so it's sort of this story where people's backgrounds all have sort of a magical element to them. So she has the ability as an indigenous person to be able to raise ghosts. So she raises her dog has passed away and he's still with her because he's there in ghost form. She has another friend who is part fairy, so he can sort of, carry light around in his hands. And different people have different powers. There's vampires and things, which is more of a curse than anything. It's a different thing. They're not monsters, but everyone has this magical ability. So when her cousin dies in a mysterious accident, she feels like there's more to the story. So she uses her powers, others use their powers to figure out what happened. This is another one where at the very end, I still didn't really know what was going to happen until, it was there. It had a lot of suspense. There were twists and turns. It was really great too, to be introduced to some of her culture, her indigenous culture, through a story like this, because of course it's fiction and of course there's this fantasy element, but it was really creatively tied to actual indigenous stories, practices, history. They tie all of that in. It was actually written by Darcy Little Badger, and this is based on some of her heritage, and it was, again, really beautiful, really well written. You get tied to these characters, and it's a mystery that feels really realistic, even though it's taking place in this sort of fantasy world. So Alasoa by Darcy Little Badger. And last but not least, this book was awesome. Let Me Hear a Rhyme by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is another one that takes place in the 90s. I didn't do that on purpose, but we sort of jumped back to the late 90s a couple times here. This one is about three friends. Their names are Quadir, Jarrell, and Jasmine, and they are investigating the death of one of their friends. It takes place in Brooklyn. It sort of corresponds with the time frame when Biggie Smalls dies, and their friend, it's actually the friend of Quadir and Jarrell, and it's Stephanie's older brother. His name is Steph, and he is found dead in Brooklyn right around the time that Biggie dies. And he was a rapper, so they sort of get this idea to put him on the map and make him a famous rapper even though he's dead. So they find all of his samples, and they're able to put together entire albums, and they're trying to get him famous posthumously so that people will know, what his skills were and how great of a rapper he was and know his story. But they don't want anyone to know that he's dead because they're afraid he won't get signed. So along the way, they're trying to figure out what happened to him. Because yes, he was found dead, but he wasn't, he wasn't doing drugs, he wasn't selling drugs, he wasn't doing all of these bad things that people said that he was. What happened to Steph? They each hold a secret, and they each wonder if maybe they had something to do with it. So they're trying to make him this famous rapper. They're trying to figure out if, his death had anything to do with the choices that they've been making. And in the end, they figure out what happened to him. They figure out, where his music was coming from, what his inspiration was, and you have some really beautiful rhymes along the way. They sort of include, rhymes and raps that were part of his music, written by an actual rapper. So this was a really great book, sort of historical fiction since we're going back in time, by a good 20 or 30 years now, but it definitely felt very contemporary. It's the kind of thing where even though they were trying to get him famous using CDs, and it was a different time in that way. You could imagine somebody kind of doing something similar now and using the internet to do it. And it was a really powerful story about not judging a book by its cover, because people sort of assumed they knew what Steph was about and that it got him killed, but maybe there's more to the story, and there definitely was in this case. So I really liked this book, Let Me Hear a Rhyme by Tiffany D. Jackson. All right, those are some books that I've enjoyed recently. Somebody will be back next Thursday with a few more titles. If you're looking for something specific, a recommendation, let us know. We can suggest some titles based on what you've enjoyed recently or something that you didn't like. We have a feature on our website called Discover Your Next Read, where we'll ask all of those questions and let you know what we think you might enjoy based on your answers. So come see us at the library. We're open 6 days a week for browsing. Your holds are still in the trailer. We'd love to see you, and we're ready for some book recommendations next week again. Thanks. Bye-bye.